I stood in Tommy's electronics repair shop on a quiet Tuesday morning, holding my daughter-in-law Sarah's cracked phone. Tommy, my childhood friend and trusted technician, powered up the device to assess the damage. Suddenly, Tommy's face went white. He grabbed my arm, pulled me behind the counter, and whispered urgently, "Cancel your cards, change your passwords, and leave immediately." Confused and alarmed, I demanded to know why. Tommy turned the phone screen toward me, and what I saw made my blood turn cold. The phone screen displayed a sophisticated banking application I had never seen before, but somehow it showed my bank account information, my credit card details, and all my personal financial data laid out like an open book. Numbers, balances, transaction histories that belonged to me were right there on Sarah's phone, organized in ways that made my stomach drop. "Jonathan, this isn't right," Tommy said, his voice barely above a whisper. "This app, whatever it is, it's not from any bank I know. Look at these features." I leaned closer, my hands trembling. 6 months had passed since I moved in with my son David and his wife Sarah after losing my beloved Margaret to cancer. 45 years of marriage ended, and I found myself completely lost in a world that suddenly felt foreign and overwhelming. Sarah had been so kind during those dark months, so patient with my confusion over modern technology, so willing to help me navigate the digital banking world that Margaret had always handled. She said she was helping me modernize my accounts, I managed to say, though the words felt hollow even as they left my mouth. After Margaret passed, everything was such a mess. Sarah offered to help me set up online banking, said it would make managing my pension and retirement savings easier. Tommy shook his head, his weathered face grave. We had grown up together in this small Ohio town, played baseball in the same little league, served our country around the same time, though he went Navy while I went Army. If anyone knew me well enough to recognize when something was seriously wrong, it was Tommy. "This isn't a banking app, Jonathan. This is something else entirely. Look here." He pointed to a section of the screen that showed detailed tracking of my spending patterns, my daily routines, even notes about my sleeping habits. "This is monitoring software. Someone's been watching every financial move you make." The app showed transaction histories going back months, including transfers I definitely remembered making, but also some I felt fuzzy about. Sarah had been so helpful during those grief-stricken weeks after the funeral, when everything felt like I was moving through thick fog. She would sit with me at the kitchen table, her laptop open, explaining how we could move some money into better accounts, how we could set up automatic payments to make my life simpler. "I remember some of these transactions," I said, pointing at the screen. "But Tommy, I swear I don't remember authorizing all of them." Sarah was always there, always helping, and I was so grateful. After Margaret died, I couldn't think straight for months. "That's exactly what someone like this would count on," Tommy said grimly. "Grief makes people vulnerable, makes them trust without questioning. But Jonathan, look at this section here." He navigated to another part of the application that showed my account balances, but also displayed pending transfers scheduled for the next day. My blood pressure spiked as I saw the amounts. $25,000 scheduled to move to an account labeled as Investment Portfolio A, and another $25,000 going to Investment Portfolio B. Account numbers I had never seen before, institutions I had never heard of. $50,000, I whispered. "Tommy, I never authorized those transfers. I would remember something like that." "Of course you would, because you didn't authorize them." Tommy's jaw was tight with anger. "Jonathan, someone has been systematically accessing your accounts. This app, it's not just monitoring your money, it's designed to manipulate it. Look at these features here." The screen showed options for scheduled transfers, account access simulation, and something called authentication bypass, technical terms that meant nothing to me, but the intent was becoming crystal clear. Someone had been using this phone to steal from me, and they had been doing it gradually, carefully, making it look legitimate. "How much are we talking about, Tommy?" He spent several minutes navigating through the app, his expression growing darker with each screen. "From what I can see here, there have been smaller transfers over the past 4 months. 5,000 here, 8,000 there, always labeled as investments or account optimization. Jonathan, if these records are accurate, someone has already moved nearly $20,000 out of your accounts." The room felt like it was spinning. $20,000 was a significant chunk of my retirement savings, money that Margaret and I had carefully saved over decades of hard work. Money that was supposed to last me through my remaining years. Money that was supposed to be there for David when I was gone. But the statement Sarah helps me review every month, they never showed these transfers. That's because whoever set this up knew exactly how to hide the transactions. They're probably moving money through multiple accounts, making it look like legitimate investment transfers to anyone doing a casual review. But this app shows the real story. Tommy continued exploring the phone, and with each new discovery, my heart sank deeper. There were photographs of my important documents, pictures of my driver's license, social security card, and even the inside of my home, including shots of my bedroom and the small office where I kept my filing cabinet. Sarah took these photos, I realized aloud. She said she wanted to help me organize my important papers, make digital copies in case anything happened to the originals. I thought she was being thoughtful. Jonathan, I think you need to sit down for this next part. I eased myself into the old chair behind Tommy's counter, the same chair I had sat in countless times over the years when I brought my television or radio in for repair. But this time felt different. This time, I was the one being dissected and examined. "Show me," I said. Tommy pulled up what appeared to be a messaging interface within the app. These are text conversations, but they're not on the normal messaging system. This is encrypted communication, probably designed to avoid detection. The messages were between Sarah and someone identified only as M in the contacts. As Tommy scrolled through them, I read conversations that made my blood run cold. Discussions about the target's routine, conversations about optimal transfer amounts, and worst of all, casual references to the old man that could only be referring to me. "Tommy, stop scrolling. Go back to that message from 3 days ago." He found the message I had spotted. "Old man's been asking fewer questions lately. The evening tea routine is working perfectly. He's usually unconscious by 9 p.m. Gives us a solid 8-hour window for account access." "Evening tea routine?" I said, though I already knew what it meant. "Sarah makes me chamomile tea every night. Says it helps with sleep, helps with the grief. I've been sleeping so deeply lately, more deeply than I ever remember sleeping. Sometimes I wake up feeling groggy, confused. Jonathan, I think she's been drugging you." The words hung in the air like a physical weight. Everything started falling into place with horrible clarity. The deep, dreamless sleep that left me feeling disconnected the next day. The mornings when I would find my laptop moved slightly from where I remembered leaving it. The times when Sarah would mention financial conversations we had supposedly had the night before, conversations I couldn't recall having. "We need to call the police," I said. But Tommy was still scrolling through the messages. "Wait, Jonathan, there's more. Look at this message from yesterday." The message read, "Timeline needs to accelerate. Target getting suspicious about missing documents. Recommend executing final phase by end of week." "Final phase?" I asked. Tommy's face was grave as he showed me the response message. "Understood. Friday night optimal. Husband will be out of town for work conference. Make it look accidental. Basement stairs, scenario, as discussed." The words on that screen hit me like a physical blow. Friday was 2 days away. David had indeed mentioned a work conference he had to attend this week, a sudden trip that Sarah had encouraged him to take. "You work so hard," she had told him. "This conference could really advance your career." "Tommy, they're planning to kill me. It looks that way. But we're going to stop them." Tommy's voice carried the same determination I remembered from our younger days when he would stand up to bullies twice his size. "Right now, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with." He continued examining the phone with the methodical precision that had made him the best electronics technician in the county. What we discovered over the next hour painted a picture more sinister than anything I could have imagined. The messaging system contained conversations going back 8 months, starting well before Margaret's death. Sarah and this mysterious M had been planning their approach to me while my wife was still alive, still fighting cancer. They had researched my financial situation, my family dynamics, my vulnerabilities. "Look at this message from last October," Tommy said. Sarah writes, "Target's wife likely has less than 6 months based on medical records accessed through husband's insurance portal. Beginning preliminary relationship establishment." I remembered October. Margaret was getting weaker, spending more time in bed, and David was working longer hours to pay for medical expenses not covered by insurance. Sarah had started coming by the house more often, bringing groceries, helping with Margaret's care, being what I thought was a devoted daughter-in-law during our family's darkest time. She was already planning this while Margaret was dying, I said, the betrayal cutting deeper than I thought possible. The messages revealed that Sarah had been systematically gathering information about my finances for months. She had accessed my insurance portal using David's login credentials, obtained details about my pension, my Social Security benefits, even my life insurance policy. Every kind gesture, every helpful suggestion had been calculated. Here's where it gets worse, Jonathan. This isn't her first time. Tommy showed me a folder within the app labeled Previous Projects. Inside were detailed files on 12 other elderly individuals, complete with photos, financial information, and status updates. Names like Robert K., Columbus, with a status of complete, 187 kelvins recovered. Another labeled Dorothy M., Cincinnati with complete, 94 kelvins recovered. Recovered? I asked. That's what they call it when they successfully steal everything and close out a case, Tommy explained. Look at these status updates. The files showed a disturbing pattern. Each case followed a similar timeline. Initial contact, relationship building, financial access, systematic draining of accounts, and then a final entry marked either relocated or terminated. Tommy, what does terminated mean? His expression told me everything I needed to know before he spoke. I think it means exactly what we both suspect it means. We found news articles linked within the app, local obituaries and accident reports for several of the individuals whose files were marked as terminated. Robert K. had died in a house fire. Dorothy M. had suffered a fatal fall down her basement stairs. An 82-year-old man named Charles had died from what appeared to be an accidental overdose of heart medication. This is organized elder abuse on a massive scale, I said. How many people are involved in this? Tommy navigated to a contact section that revealed the scope of the operation. Beyond Sarah and the mysterious M, there were at least 6 other individuals involved, each with specific roles. Someone labeled Doc appeared to be responsible for obtaining medical records and prescription information. Another contact called Tech handled the digital aspects, the app development and financial system infiltration. Legal seemed to handle identity theft and document falsification. It's like a corporation designed to prey on grieving elderly people, Tommy said, and they're sophisticated. Look at these conversation logs. The messages showed detailed planning discussions that revealed the level of their operation. They had studied psychological manipulation techniques, researched the most effective ways to gain trust from lonely seniors, even consulted with someone identified as therapist who provided advice on exploiting grief responses. One message from Sarah to M read, "Target responding well to dependency, building techniques. Confusion about simple tasks increasing since implementing evening medication enhancement. Ready to proceed to financial access phase." Medication enhancement, I repeated. They've been drugging me for months. And documenting your reactions, Tommy added, showing me a detailed log of my behavior patterns. They've been recording how the drugs affect you. What dosage keeps you compliant but not suspicious? How long the effects last? The logs included notes like subject sleeps deeply from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. with current dosage and morning confusion lasts approximately 2 hours. Optimal window for document access. I thought about all those mornings when I woke up feeling disoriented, when Sarah would helpfully remind me of conversations I supposedly had the night before, when she would show me documents I had apparently agreed to sign but couldn't remember signing. They've been controlling my entire life, I realized. Every decision, every financial move, it's all been them pulling the strings. Tommy found another section of the app that contained audio recordings. Hours and hours of conversations recorded in my own home, including private conversations between David and me, phone calls with my doctor, even recordings of me talking to Margaret's picture when I thought I was alone. "Your house is bugged," Tommy said grimly. "They've been listening to everything." The recordings revealed the depth of their manipulation. In one conversation, I could hear myself talking to David about my concerns over some missing documents. David's response was to suggest that I might be becoming forgetful, that perhaps Sarah could help me stay more organized. At the time, David's suggestion had seemed caring. Now I realized that Sarah had probably coached him on what to say. Another recording captured a phone conversation with my doctor about my recent episodes of confusion and memory gaps. My doctor had attributed these symptoms to grief and aging, recommending that I consider having a family member help manage my medications and important decisions. "They've been isolating me," I said, "making everyone think I'm becoming incompetent so that when they finally steal everything, it'll look like I made bad decisions because of declining mental capacity." That's exactly what they've been doing. And look at this timeline. Tommy showed me a planning document that laid out their complete strategy. Phase 1 had been relationship building and trust establishment. Phase 2 was gaining access to financial accounts and beginning small transfers. Phase 3 involved increasing my dependency on Sarah while implementing the drugging routine. Phase 4 was systematic draining of larger amounts. Phase 5 was elimination of the target to prevent discovery. They're currently in Phase 4, moving toward Phase 5, Tommy said. But there's something else here. Something about your son. He found a conversation thread between Sarah and M, discussing David's role in their plan. My heart stopped as I read messages debating whether David was becoming suspicious and whether he would need to be handled as well. "They're planning to hurt David too," I said. "It looks like they're undecided. Some messages suggest they think they can continue manipulating him even after you're gone. Convince him that your death was an accident and help him through his grief. Other messages suggest he knows too much and represents a risk." The final message in that thread, sent just yesterday, read, "Husband asking too many questions about father's medications and behavior. May need to implement backup scenario for both targets." Both targets. My son and I were both marked for death by the woman he had married, the woman he loved, the woman he trusted to help care for his grieving father. "Tommy, we have to warn David." "We will. But first, we need to understand their complete plan. Look at this." He showed me detailed floor plans of my son's house, the house where I had been living. The plans marked optimal routes, identified security vulnerabilities, and noted which rooms had the best acoustics for recording conversations. They had mapped out escape routes, identified which neighbors were most likely to be home during different times of day, even researched the response times of local emergency services. "They've been planning this murder for months," I said. "Every detail, every contingency." "But they made one critical mistake," Tommy said with a grim smile. "They put all their planning, all their evidence, all their communications on this phone. And now we have it all." Tommy's fingers moved across the phone screen with growing intensity as he uncovered more evidence. What we found next made me realize this wasn't just about me, or even just about the 12 other victims we had already discovered. This was something much larger and more organized. "Jonathan, look at these financial records," Tommy said, pulling up a section of the app I hadn't seen before. "This operation has been running for over 3 years. The total amount they've stolen from elderly victims is over $2.4 million. The numbers were staggering. Detailed spreadsheets showed victim names, amounts stolen, timelines, and status updates. But what made my blood run even colder were the entries marked as future targets with preliminary research already completed. "Mrs. Henderson from down the street is on this list," I said, recognizing the name of my elderly neighbor. "And Frank Morrison from church." "Tommy, they've been researching half the seniors in our community." "It gets worse. Look at these meeting notes." The app contained detailed minutes from what appeared to be regular planning meetings. The group met monthly to discuss current operations, share techniques, and identify new targets. The meetings included attendance records showing 8 regular participants, each with specific specialties. M turned out to be Marcus Chen, the operational leader who coordinated the murders. Doc was actually Dr. Patricia Walsh, a nurse practitioner who had been accessing medical records and providing pharmaceutical advice for drugging victims. Tech was someone named Riley Brooks, responsible for developing the surveillance apps and financial infiltration tools. "A nurse practitioner," I said. "That's how they knew exactly what drugs to use, exactly how to make my symptoms look like natural aging and grief responses." The meeting notes revealed their systematic approach. New targets were identified through social media research, obituary monitoring, and hospital network infiltration. They looked for recently widowed individuals with significant assets and limited family support systems. "Here's how they found you," Tommy said, showing me a research file with my name on it. They monitored Margaret's obituary, researched your military service record to estimate your pension value, and identified David as a potential entry point into your life. The file contained screenshots of David's social media posts about his mother's illness and death. Sarah had used these posts to approach David, presenting herself as someone who had also lost a parent to cancer and could provide emotional support during his grief. She met David at a grief support group, I realized. That wasn't coincidence, she was hunting him. The app showed that Sarah's real name was Sandra Mitchell, and she had been using false identities for years. She had 3 different driver's licenses, multiple social security numbers, and a collection of fabricated personal histories she used to build relationships with targets and their families. "Look at these identity documents," Tommy said. "Birth certificates, college transcripts, employment histories, even fake medical records. This woman has been professionally trained in identity manipulation." But the most disturbing discovery was a training manual stored on the phone, a detailed guide for what they called inheritance acceleration, which was their euphemism for murdering elderly people after stealing their money. The manual included sections on selecting appropriate targets, building trust relationships, implementing psychological manipulation techniques, administering drugs without detection, and executing murders that would appear accidental. "Listen to this," Tommy said, reading from the manual. Chapter 7. Optimal Elimination Methods for Different Target Profiles. For targets with family involvement, basement stairs accidents provide optimal plausibility while minimizing forensic complications. They had studied forensic investigation techniques, learned what evidence to avoid leaving behind, and developed methods for staging accidents that would pass casual police investigation. The manual included case studies from their previous murders, analyzing what had worked well and what could be improved. "They're learning from each murder, getting better at it," I said. "This isn't just greed, Tommy. These people enjoy what they're doing." The evidence of that enjoyment was scattered throughout their communications. Jokes about putting old folks to sleep, celebrations when transfers went through successfully, and casual discussions about which murder methods were most satisfying to implement. One message thread contained photographs from their previous victims' homes, taken after the murders but before the bodies were discovered. Trophies of their success, showing the crime scenes they had carefully staged. "They're serial killers," I said. "Not just thieves, but actual serial killers who happen to steal money as part of their method." Tommy found a section of the app dedicated to what they called victim psychology research. Detailed studies of how elderly people respond to different manipulation techniques, what types of trust building work most effectively, and how to identify individuals who were most vulnerable to their approaches. "They've turned elder abuse into a science," Tommy said. "Look at these psychological profiles." The profiles included categories like recently widowed males with military backgrounds, isolated females with limited family contact, and couples where one spouse has dementia. For each category, they had developed specific approach strategies and manipulation protocols. My profile was filed under military widower, high assets, protective son. The strategy notes read, "Approach through daughter-in-law relationship. Use helpfulness and organization as trust-building tools. Exploit grief disorientation and natural desire to not burden grieving son." They knew exactly how to manipulate me from the beginning, I realized. Every kindness, every helpful gesture, it was all calculated. But as we continued reading, we discovered something that gave me hope. The group had been growing careless. Recent messages showed increasing tension between members, disputes over money distribution, and concerns about police investigations getting too close to their activities. "Look at this argument between Sarah and Marcus," Tommy said. "She wants to slow down operations because she thinks they're attracting too much attention. He wants to accelerate everything and extract as much money as possible before relocating." The argument had escalated over the past week, with Marcus threatening to eliminate Sarah if she didn't follow his timeline. Sarah had responded by threatening to expose the entire operation if anything happened to her. "They're turning on each other," I said. "Criminals always do when the pressure increases." Tommy found evidence that at least 2 other group members were planning to betray the rest and disappear with their share of the stolen money. Dr. Patricia Walsh had been copying files and was apparently preparing to blackmail the others. Riley Brooks had been skimming money from the communal accounts and had already relocated most of his assets to offshore accounts. The whole organization is falling apart, Tommy said. But that makes them more dangerous, not less. Desperate criminals make desperate choices. The most recent messages, sent just hours before Sarah's phone had been brought to the repair shop, showed Marcus pressuring her to execute the final phase of my case immediately, regardless of the original timeline. "He wants to kill you tonight," Tommy said, showing me the latest exchange. Sarah argued for waiting until Friday as planned, but Marcus overruled her. He says too many group members are becoming unstable, and they need to finish your case and disappear. Tonight? I felt the room spinning again. According to this, Sarah was supposed to confirm that David was definitely going out of town, increase your evening medication to ensure you'd be unconscious, and signal Marcus when the house was clear. The plan was detailed and thorough. Marcus would enter through the basement door, which Sarah had left unlocked the previous night. He would wait until she confirmed I was unconscious from the drugged tea, then stage my fall down the basement stairs while Sarah was conveniently out of the house at her book club. "But her phone is here with us," I said. "She can't communicate with Marcus," which means their plan is already disrupted. But it also means she's probably panicking, trying to figure out what went wrong. Tommy showed me the most recent activity on the phone: multiple missed calls from Marcus, increasingly urgent text messages, and finally a message sent just 20 minutes earlier: phone contact lost. Executing backup communication protocol. Target elimination proceeding as scheduled. Backup protocol? I asked. It looks like they have alternative ways to communicate when their primary method fails. Probably burner phones or coded messages through other channels. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. "Tommy, they're still planning to kill me tonight. Even without this phone, they have backup plans." "But now we know about it," Tommy said firmly, "and we have all the evidence we need to stop them." He was right. The phone contained everything: financial records proving the theft, communications proving the conspiracy, planning documents proving premeditated murder, and detailed information about their entire operation. "We have enough evidence here to put the whole group away for life," Tommy said, "but we need to act fast." As if to emphasize his point, we heard a car door slam outside the shop. Through the window, I could see Sarah hurrying toward the front door, her face tight with anxiety. "She's here," I whispered. "Quick, get behind the counter," Tommy whispered, shoving the phone into his tool drawer. "Act normal." Sarah burst through the shop door, her usual composed demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. Her hair was disheveled, and I noticed her hands trembling slightly as she approached the counter. "Tommy, thank goodness you're here," she said, though her voice carried an edge I had never heard before. "I need my phone back right now. There's been a family emergency." "Family emergency?" I asked, standing up from behind the counter. "Sarah, what's wrong?" She startled when she saw me, clearly not expecting me to be there. For just a moment, her mask slipped entirely, and I saw something cold and calculating in her eyes before she quickly recovered. "Oh, Jonathan, perfect. I've been looking everywhere for you." Her voice was too bright, too forced. "David's conference was canceled at the last minute, and there's been an accident with his flight. I need my phone to coordinate getting him home safely." It was a lie, and we all knew it. But I played along, watching her carefully for any sign of what she might be planning. "That's terrible news," I said. "What kind of accident?" "Just some mechanical issues, nothing serious," she said quickly, clearly not having thought through her cover story. "Tommy, please, I really need my phone." Tommy had been watching her as carefully as I was. "Well, I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is that the screen can be repaired. The bad news is that I found some problems with the internal software. Looks like someone's been using your phone to access accounts that don't belong to them." Sarah's face went white. "What do you mean?" "Banking apps, financial monitoring software, things that shouldn't be on a personal phone." Tommy's voice was calm but firm. "I think someone's been using your device for identity theft." "That's impossible," Sarah said, but her voice cracked. "I would know if someone was using my phone for something like that." "Would you?" I asked quietly. "Sarah, when did you last really look through all the applications on your phone?" She turned toward me with an expression I had never seen before. Gone was any pretense of the caring daughter-in-law. What I saw now was cold calculation mixed with growing desperation. "Jonathan, I think you're confused again. You've been having so many memory problems lately. Maybe you should go home and rest." "My memory is fine," I said. "In fact, it's clearer than it's been in months." Tommy stepped closer to the counter. "Sarah, I think we need to call the police. This phone contains evidence of serious criminal activity. Give me my phone, she said, her voice now completely devoid of warmth. Give it to me right now, or you'll both regret it. Is that a threat? I asked. It's a promise, she replied, and I saw her hand move toward her purse. Tommy and I had discussed this possibility while we waited. If she came for the phone, it meant she knew we had discovered her secret. If she knew that, she would be desperate, and desperate people were dangerous. Sarah, let's all calm down, Tommy said. Why don't you explain what's really going on here? What's going on is that two old men are about to learn why it's dangerous to interfere with things they don't understand, she said. Her hand was definitely in her purse now, and I could see her gripping something. Like we don't understand how you've been drugging me? I asked. Or how you've been stealing from my accounts? Or how you and your partner Marcus were planning to murder me tonight? Her face transformed entirely. The mask was completely gone now, replaced by something predatory and vicious. You stupid old fool. You should have just died quietly like you were supposed to. Like the other 12 people you've killed, Tommy asked. Sarah's eyes darted between us, calculating her options. You don't know what you're dealing with. This is bigger than just me. Even if you call the police, even if you think you have evidence, there are people involved in this who can make problems disappear. People like Marcus? I asked. Because we know all about Marcus. Marcus is nothing compared to the people behind this operation, she said. Did you really think this was just some small-time theft ring? We have connections in police departments, in banks, in hospitals, in government offices. How do you think we access medical records so easily? How do you think we get Social Security information? The revelation hit me hard. This wasn't just a criminal organization, it was a corruption network that had infiltrated legitimate institutions. But here's what you really don't understand, Sarah continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. Marcus isn't coming for you tonight because of the original plan. He's coming because I called him 20 minutes ago and told him that two old men had stumbled onto something they shouldn't have seen. My blood turned to ice. You called him? Backup phone, she said with a cold smile. The phone you found was just for documentation. Did you really think professional criminals would put all their communications on a single device? Tommy and I exchanged glances. We had been so focused on the evidence we had found, we hadn't considered that there might be additional communication methods we didn't know about. Marcus is already on his way here, Sarah continued. In fact, he should be here any minute. And when he arrives, this is going to become a very different conversation. As if summoned by her words, I heard the distinctive sound of a motorcycle engine pulling up outside the shop. Through the window, I could see a large man removing his helmet and looking directly at us through the glass. That would be Marcus, Sarah said pleasantly. Now, gentlemen, you have a choice. Give me that phone and forget everything you think you've learned, or discover firsthand why we've been so successful at making elderly people disappear. The front door chimed as Marcus entered the shop. He was bigger than I had expected, probably in his 40s, with the kind of build that suggested he was comfortable with physical violence. His eyes surveyed the scene quickly, taking in Tommy, myself, and Sarah's position near the counter. Problems? He asked Sarah, though his gaze never left Tommy and me. These two gentlemen have been looking at things that don't belong to them, Sarah replied. I thought you might help them understand why that was a mistake. Marcus smiled, and it was one of the most unsettling expressions I had ever seen. Oh, I can definitely help with that. In fact, this might work out better than our original plan. How so? Sarah asked. Well, now instead of one old man having an accident at home, we can have two old men having an accident at an electronics shop. Gas leak explosion, maybe. Very tragic. Very thorough. I felt Tommy tense beside me, and I realized we had walked directly into a trap. By confronting Sarah with the evidence, we had given her the opportunity to call for backup and turn the situation to her advantage. The beautiful thing about gas explosions, Marcus continued, is that they destroy evidence very completely. Phones, computers, documents, bodies, everything just disappears in the fire. You won't get away with this, Tommy said, though his voice was steady. People know we're here. Do they? Marcus asked. Because from what Sarah tells me, Jonathan here has been having memory problems, getting confused, wandering off sometimes. And Tommy, well, everyone knows you work alone in this shop, sometimes for hours without seeing another person. He was right, and we all knew it. Tommy's shop was on a quiet side street, It wasn't unusual for him to work alone for entire afternoons without any customers stopping by. Plus, Sarah has already established her alibi, Marcus continued. She's been at the library for the past 2 hours, researching information for Jonathan's financial planning. Several people have seen her there, had conversations with her. Very thoughtful daughter-in-law, helping her confused father-in-law manage his affairs. I realized the trap had been set long before we had even discovered the evidence on the phone. Sarah had been preparing for the possibility that her deception would be discovered, and she had contingency plans in place. But I have to admit, you two have saved us some trouble, Marcus said. We were going to have to break into this shop later to retrieve the phone and eliminate any evidence that Sarah had ever been here. Now we can take care of everything at once. Sarah moved toward the counter. Give me the phone, Tommy. I don't think so, Tommy replied. Marcus sighed theatrically. Tommy, you seem like a reasonable man. Let me explain your situation. You can give us the phone, in which case your death will be quick and relatively painless. Or you can continue being difficult, in which case your death will be slow and very unpleasant. Either way, you're going to die today. The only question is how much you're going to suffer first. I looked at Tommy, and I saw something in his expression that reminded me why we had been friends for over 50 years. He wasn't going to give up without a fight, and neither was I. Marcus, I said, let me explain your situation. You think you're dealing with 2 helpless old men, but what you're actually dealing with is a combat veteran who has been in tighter spots than this, and an electronics expert who knows more about this town's infrastructure than you could possibly imagine. Is that supposed to frighten me? Marcus asked with a laugh. It should, Tommy said quietly, and then he pressed a button under his counter. Instantly, every electronic device in the shop began emitting a piercing alarm. Security cameras activated, recording devices started running, and most importantly, a silent alarm connected directly to the police station began broadcasting our location and emergency status. You see, Marcus, Tommy said calmly over the noise, the thing about being an electronics expert in a small town is that you get to install a lot of security systems for a lot of important people, including the police chief. Marcus's confident expression faltered for the first time. And the thing about being a combat veteran, I added, is that you learn to plan for situations exactly like this one. The piercing alarm filled Tommy's shop, and I could see Marcus's confidence beginning to crack. Sarah looked between Marcus and the activated security system with growing panic. Turn it off, Marcus ordered, but Tommy just smiled. Can't do that, Marcus. Once the emergency protocol activates, only the police can shut it down, and I'm guessing they're going to want to have a conversation with all of us. Marcus pulled out his phone, probably to call for backup, but Tommy had thought of that too. Cell phone jamming is another handy feature of a good security system. You're not calling anyone. I moved closer to Tommy, positioning myself where I could see both Marcus and Sarah while keeping the counter between us. Years of military training were coming back to me, the tactical thinking that never really leaves a soldier. How long until police arrive? I asked Tommy. About 3 minutes in this neighborhood, he replied. But I don't think our new friends want to wait around to meet them. Marcus was clearly thinking the same thing. Sarah, we're leaving. Now. What about the phone? She demanded. Forget the phone. We have bigger problems. But Sarah wasn't willing to give up so easily. That phone has everything on it. All our communications, all our financial records, all our target information. If the police get it, the entire operation is finished. The operation is already finished, Marcus snapped. Thanks to your carelessness. My carelessness? Sarah's voice rose with anger. You're the one who insisted on moving up the timeline. You're the one who wanted to rush everything. I watched them argue with fascination. Even facing potential arrest, they couldn't stop turning on each other. It was exactly what Tommy and I had hoped for. Marcus, I said calmly, you should probably know that we've already copied all the information from that phone. It was a lie, but a believable one. Marcus's face darkened with rage. You're bluffing. Am I? Tommy, tell Marcus about your data recovery capabilities. Tommy picked up on my improvisation immediately. Digital forensics is part of my business, Marcus. The first thing I did when I saw suspicious software on that phone was create a complete backup of all stored information. Even if you destroyed the original phone, we'd still have copies of everything. Everything, I emphasized. All the victim files, all the financial records, all the communications between you and your entire network. Names, addresses, bank accounts, the complete organizational structure. Sarah and Marcus exchanged worried glances. They were beginning to realize that their carefully controlled situation was spiraling beyond their ability to manage it. But here's what you really should understand, I continued. Tommy and I aren't just two random old men who stumbled onto your operation. We're two old men who have spent the last hour planning exactly how to bring down your entire network. What do you mean? Sarah asked. Tommy pulled out a notebook from under his counter. While we were going through your phone, Jonathan and I were also making lists. Lists of all your victims, all your accomplices, all your financial accounts, and all your planned future targets. And while you were threatening us, I added, we were also making phone calls. Marcus's face went white. What kind of phone calls? Well, first we called my cousin Janet, Tommy said, Detective Janet Rivera with the state police. She's been investigating a series of suspicious deaths among elderly people across Ohio. Turns out she's been building a case for months, but couldn't find solid evidence. We also called the FBI Financial Crimes Division, I continued. They're very interested in organized elder fraud operations, especially ones that cross state lines. And we called the local news station, Tommy added. They love stories about local criminals preying on senior citizens. None of this was actually true, but Sarah and Marcus didn't know that. They were looking increasingly desperate as they realized their situation was deteriorating rapidly. You're lying, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Then why can you hear sirens in the distance? We all stopped talking and listened. Sure enough, the faint sound of police sirens was growing louder as they approached the shop. Here's what's going to happen, I said, taking control of the conversation. In about 2 minutes, this place is going to be full of police officers. They're going to arrest you both, and they're going to use the evidence from that phone to track down your entire organization. But, Tommy added, Jonathan and I are reasonable men. We're willing to make you a deal. Sarah and Marcus looked at each other, clearly grasping for any possible way out of their situation. What kind of deal? Sarah asked. The kind that might keep you from spending the rest of your lives in prison, I replied. You're going to cooperate fully with the investigation. You're going to provide information about every member of your organization, every victim you've targeted, and every crime you've committed. In exchange for what? Marcus demanded. In exchange for us recommending that the prosecutor consider your cooperation when determining charges, Tommy said. Instead of first-degree murder, maybe you get manslaughter. Instead of life in prison, maybe you get 20 years. It was a desperate gambit, but we needed them to believe they had options other than fighting their way out or attempting to destroy evidence. And if we don't cooperate? Sarah asked. Then you spend the rest of your lives in maximum security prison, and we make sure everyone knows exactly what you did to innocent elderly people, I said. Do you have any idea how fellow inmates treat people who prey on the elderly? The sirens were getting much louder now. Through the window, I could see the first police car turning onto our street. Time's up, Tommy said. What's it going to be? Marcus looked at Sarah, and I could see him weighing his options. He was clearly considering whether he could fight his way past two old men and escape before the police arrived. Marcus, don't even think about it, I warned him. I may be in my 60s, but I'm still in good shape, and I still remember how to disable someone twice my size. And I've got more security features in this shop than you could possibly imagine, Tommy added. Try to get violent, and you'll discover exactly how painful a high-voltage security system can be. The police cars were pulling up outside now. Through the window, I could see officers getting out of their vehicles and moving toward the shop entrance. Last chance, I said. Cooperate and live, or fight and spend your final free moments getting tasered by Tommy's security system. Sarah was the first to crack. Marcus, they're right. It's over. Let's take the deal. Sarah, you don't understand what these people will do to us if we cooperate, Marcus said desperately. What people, Marcus? The organization is falling apart anyway. Half of them are already planning to betray the rest of us. At least this way we might survive. The front door of the shop opened, and Detective Janet Rivera walked in, followed by 3 uniformed officers. Tommy, she called out, what's the emergency? I looked at Tommy in amazement. You actually do have a cousin named Janet who's a detective? Did you think I was making that up? Tommy replied with a grin. Janet, meet Jonathan, and meet Sarah and Marcus, who have a very interesting story to tell you about elder abuse and murder." Detective Rivera's expression became very serious as she took in the scene. "Marcus Chen, we've been looking for you." Marcus's shoulders sagged in defeat. "I want to make a deal." Detective Rivera's team moved swiftly to secure the scene. Marcus and Sarah were read their rights and placed in separate police cars. But not before Rivera had heard enough of our story to understand the scope of what we had uncovered. "Tommy, I need you to preserve that phone exactly as it is," she instructed. "Don't let anyone else touch it until our digital forensics team can examine it properly." "Already done," Tommy replied, handing her the device in an evidence bag he had prepared. "I've also got digital backups of everything we accessed, stored on a secured drive." Rivera looked at both of us with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You two realize you could have gotten yourselves killed today?" "We almost did get ourselves killed," I admitted. "But we also couldn't let them continue murdering elderly people." "Tell me about the immediate threat," Rivera said. "Is there anyone else who might come looking for these two?" Tommy and I filled her in on everything we had learned about the organization, the network of accomplices, the planned timeline for my murder, and the sophisticated nature of their operation. "The most important thing," I explained, "is that they were planning to kill me tonight. David is supposed to be out of town at a conference, and Marcus was going to stage my death as an accidental fall down the basement stairs." "Except David's conference was canceled," Rivera said thoughtfully. "Sarah mentioned that when we were processing her, but she claimed it was canceled due to mechanical problems with his flight." "That's a lie," Tommy said. "According to the messages on her phone, she told Marcus that David would be away. If the conference was really canceled, why wouldn't she have updated their plan?" Rivera's radio crackled with updates from other units. "Detective Rivera, this is Unit 7. We've just arrested Dr. Patricia Walsh at her clinic. She was in the process of destroying medical records when we arrived." "And this is Unit 3. Another voice came through. "We've got Riley Brooks in custody at his apartment. Found him trying to wipe computer hard drives." "They're moving fast," Rivera said. "Sounds like word is spreading through their network that the operation has been compromised." "How did you coordinate arrests so quickly?" I asked. "We've been building a case against this group for 8 months, Rivera explained. "We had identified several of the key players, but couldn't prove their connection to each other or to the murders. The evidence on that phone is exactly what we needed to move forward with arrests." Tommy's shop had become a command center for the coordinated operation. Rivera's radio continued providing updates as law enforcement agencies across 3 states executed simultaneous arrests. "Detective, this is the federal task force. We've taken Marcus Chen's residence and recovered substantial financial records. Looks like documented theft, totaling over $2.7 million. Copy that. Any sign of other organization members at the location?" "Negative on additional suspects, but we've found detailed files on at least 18 victims. Some of these cases go back 5 years. Rivera turned to me with a grim expression. "Jonathan, you were victim number 19. And from what we can tell, they've been planning your case for almost a year." The scope of their planning was staggering. As Rivera's team processed the evidence from the phone, they discovered that Sarah and Marcus had been researching me and my family since shortly after Margaret's cancer diagnosis. They had identified David as their entry point, researched his emotional vulnerabilities, and calculated exactly how to position Sarah to gain access to both of us. They knew David was struggling financially with medical bills, Rivera explained. Sarah approached him at a grief support group with a story about losing her own parent to cancer. She presented herself as someone who understood his pain and could provide emotional support. "Everything about her was fake," I said. "Her background, her history, even her name." "Sandra Mitchell was one of at least 4 identities she's been using," Rivera confirmed. "Birth certificates, social security numbers, college transcripts, employment history, all fabricated. She's a professional con artist who specialized in targeting families dealing with medical crises." "What about David?" I asked. "How much did he know?" "From everything we've found so far, your son appears to be completely innocent," Rivera said gently. "In fact, he was as much a victim as you were. The psychological manipulation techniques they used on him were sophisticated and specifically designed to make him believe that helping Sarah help you was the best way to show his love and support." The relief I felt was overwhelming. Throughout this entire ordeal, One of my deepest fears had been that my own son might have been involved in planning my murder. Learning that he was also a victim made the betrayal somehow more bearable. "We need to contact David and bring him in for his own protection," Rivera continued. "If Marcus and Sarah were planning to eliminate both of you, he could still be in danger." "He's at a conference in Chicago," I said. At least that's where Sarah said he was going. Rivera assigned one of her officers to track down David while she continued coordinating the larger operation. As the afternoon progressed, the full scope of the elder abuse network became clear. "We've now arrested 11 people across 4 states, Rivera reported. The organization was much larger than we initially suspected. They had accomplices in banking, healthcare, legal services, and even law enforcement. "Law enforcement?" Tommy asked. "A deputy sheriff in Kentucky was providing information about elderly residents who might be good targets," Rivera explained. "He was accessing police reports about domestic disturbances, medical emergencies, and family problems to identify vulnerable seniors. The corruption was deeper and more systematic than any of us had imagined. The network had infiltrated legitimate institutions to gather information about potential victims and to cover their tracks after committing crimes." "How many people did they actually kill?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. "We're still investigating, but from the evidence we've recovered so far, we can directly link them to at least 8 murders over the past 3 years. There are another 12 deaths that we're now reviewing as potentially suspicious. 8 confirmed murders, possibly 20 total. 20 elderly people who had died because they had money and were vulnerable to manipulation. The good news," Rivera continued, "is that we've been able to freeze their financial accounts and recover most of the stolen money. It looks like they were planning to disappear with everything early next week, but your discovery of the phone prevented that." "What happens now?" Tommy asked. "Now we build the strongest possible case against every member of this organization," Rivera said, "and we make sure they spend the rest of their lives in prison." My phone rang, and I saw David's number on the screen. Rivera nodded for me to answer it. "Dad, what's going on?" David's voice was tight with worry. "I just got a call from someone saying they were with the police, telling me that Sarah has been arrested." "Son, where are you right now?" "I'm at the airport in Chicago. My conference was canceled, and I was about to catch a flight home." "Dad, what's happening?" "David, listen to me carefully. Do not go home. Do not go to the house. Go directly to the police station when you land. Detective Rivera will explain everything when you get there." "Dad, you're scaring me. Is Sarah really under arrest? What is she supposed to have done?" I looked at Rivera, who nodded for me to continue. "David, the woman you married isn't who she claimed to be. Her real name is Sandra Mitchell, and she's part of a criminal organization that targets elderly people for theft and murder. She was planning to kill me tonight, and possibly you as well." The silence on the other end of the line lasted for nearly 30 seconds. "Dad, that can't be true. Sarah loves our family. She's been taking care of you, helping you with your finances, making sure you're safe. Son, she's been drugging me and stealing my money. Everything she did to help me was actually designed to make it easier to rob me and eventually murder me. I don't understand. This doesn't make sense." Detective Rivera took the phone from me. "David, this is Detective Janet Rivera with the Ohio State Police. Your father is telling you the truth. We have extensive evidence that the woman you know as Sarah has been systematically defrauding your father and was planning to commit murder. We need you to come in immediately for your own protection." "My own protection? Are you saying I'm in danger too?" "We believe you were also targeted for elimination once your father's case was completed," Rivera explained gently. "The organization views family members who might ask questions as potential threats." Another long silence, and then I heard David's voice, smaller and more vulnerable than it had sounded since he was a child. "Dad, are you okay? Are you safe?" "I'm safe, son, and I'm going to be fine. But I need you to get on the next flight home and come directly to the police station. We'll explain everything when you get here." "Okay, Dad. I'm coming home." Rivera handed the phone back to me, and I could hear the confusion and pain in David's voice as he tried to process what he had learned. "I love you, son," I said. "I love you too, Dad. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't see what was happening." "You have nothing to apologize for. They were professionals, and they were very good at what they did. The important thing is that we're both safe now." As I hung up the phone, Rivera placed a hand on my shoulder. "You saved both your lives today, Jonathan. and probably saved the lives of future victims as well. "Tommy saved my life," I said, looking at my oldest friend. "If he hadn't recognized what was on that phone, if he hadn't had security systems in place, if he hadn't been brave enough to stand up to those people, I'd be dead tonight." "We saved each other," Tommy replied simply, "just like we've been doing for the past 50 years. 6 months have passed since that terrifying day in Tommy's shop, and the final chapter of this nightmare is finally being written. The trials concluded last week, and justice has been served in ways I never thought possible when I first saw that phone screen. Marcus Chen received life in prison without the possibility of parole for 8 counts of first-degree murder. Sarah, whose real name we learned was Sandra Mitchell, received 35 years for conspiracy to commit murder and elder fraud. Dr. Patricia Walsh lost her medical license and received 20 years for her role in providing drugs and medical information used to harm elderly victims. All 11 members of the organization were convicted. The corrupt deputy sheriff in Kentucky received 15 years. The banking accomplices received sentences ranging from 8 to 12 years. Riley Brooks, the technology expert, cooperated fully with investigators and received a reduced sentence of 6 years in exchange for helping authorities understand the digital aspects of their operation. Most importantly, we recovered nearly $2.3 million in stolen money, which has been returned to victims' families. For those victims who were murdered, their children and grandchildren received inheritance that had been stolen from them. For those who survived, like myself, we got back money we thought was gone forever. David has moved back in with me permanently, and we're rebuilding our relationship based on complete honesty and trust. The divorce from Sarah was finalized within 2 months, and David has been attending counseling to help him process the psychological manipulation he endured. He's learned to recognize the signs of predatory behavior and has become an advocate for elder abuse prevention in our community. Tommy and I have started a nonprofit organization called Silver Shield that provides free security consultations and fraud protection education for elderly residents in our area. We visit senior centers, churches, and community groups to share our story and teach people how to recognize and prevent elder abuse. The most rewarding part of our work has been connecting with other survivors. We've met children who lost their parents to this organization, and we've been able to provide them with closure and answers they never thought they would have. We've also worked with other elderly people who were targeted but escaped before serious harm was done. Detective Rivera was promoted to head of the state's Elder Abuse Task Force, and she continues to use our case as a model for investigating other similar operations. The techniques Tommy developed for analyzing smartphones and digital devices are now being used by law enforcement agencies across the country. But perhaps the most important outcome has been the change in how our community approaches elder protection. Banks now have improved procedures for detecting unusual account activity among elderly customers. Medical facilities have enhanced privacy protections to prevent unauthorized access to patient records. Law enforcement agencies have increased training on elder abuse recognition and investigation. The experience taught me lessons I never wanted to learn but am grateful to understand. Grief makes us vulnerable in ways we don't always recognize. When we're mourning the loss of someone we love, we can become easy targets for people who know how to exploit our emotional pain and confusion. But I also learned that predators count on isolation and shame to succeed. They depend on their victims being too embarrassed to ask for help, too confused to recognize what's happening, too frightened to speak up. The moment we find the courage to reach out to people we trust, to share our concerns and ask for help, we break their power over us. Family isn't just about blood relationships. It's about who stands by you when evil knocks at your door. Tommy risked his own life to help me, and that kind of loyalty and friendship is worth more than any amount of money. Detective Rivera could have treated us like confused old men who had stumbled into something beyond our understanding, but instead she recognized our strength and worked with us as partners in bringing criminals to justice. Most importantly, I learned that we're never too old to fight back against injustice. Age doesn't make us helpless unless we choose to be helpless. Experience and wisdom are powerful weapons against those who would prey on the elderly. Sometimes the best response to evil is not to run from it, but to stand up and fight it with everything we have. The criminals in this case made a fundamental mistake. They assumed that being elderly meant being weak. They thought that grief and confusion meant helplessness. They believed that age meant vulnerability. But what they discovered is that elderly people often have something that younger people lack: decades of life experience, networks of loyal friends, and the wisdom that comes from surviving many previous challenges. If you're an elderly person listening to this story, please remember that you are not helpless. If someone is trying to control your finances, your medications, or your daily life, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is wrong. Don't be afraid to ask for help from people you trust, whether that's family members, old friends, or professionals like police officers, bank managers, or attorneys. If you're a younger person with elderly parents or relatives, please stay involved in their lives. Visit them regularly. Ask about their finances and medications. Meet the people who are helping them, and don't be afraid to ask difficult questions if something doesn't seem right. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to be suspicious on behalf of someone you care about. And to everyone, remember that elder abuse is not just a family problem or an individual tragedy. It's a community issue that requires all of us to stay alert and protective of our most vulnerable neighbors. When we create communities where elderly people are valued, respected, and protected, we create communities that are safer and stronger for everyone. Have you ever noticed warning signs of elder abuse in your community or family? What steps do you think we can all take to better protect our elderly loved ones from predators? Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video to help us reach more people with this important message. Subscribe to our channel for more stories about standing up to injustice and protecting vulnerable community members. Share this story with friends and family, especially those who might be caring for elderly relatives, because knowledge and awareness are our best defenses against those who would prey on the people we love. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that no matter how dark things may seem, there are always people willing to stand up for what's right. Stay strong, stay connected, and never give up hope.